Well, good evening and welcome to another episode of Whether or Not. I'm your host, David Guerrero, joined by our forecaster, Dennis Khrulov. Now, Dennis, after we saw that very warm conditions last week, we're starting to trend back to winter-like conditions. Dennis, will this trend continue?
So yes, I do have more wintry-like weather in my forecast coming up soon, even checking the conditions for potential winter weather next week.
Well, that sounds great, Dennis. And I heard you had some great nature in the news stories lined up. What are those stories?
So I'll be talking about the recent severe weather threat that impacted portions of New Jersey, and then I'll be taking things to the Indian Ocean and talking about Cyclone Freddie.
Oh, I'm very excited. So my Nature in the News stories involve new galaxies being discovered by the James Webb Telescope. Then my second story involves how pollinators are being affected by the spring-like conditions in the south. And with that, let's get into Nature in the News. Phil's prediction of 6 more weeks of winter may be wrong again, as many parts of the South and the Southeast are seeing their earliest spring on record, with leaves already budding on trees as much as 3 weeks early. The early spring is attributed to the warm start to 2023, with many areas off to their top 10 warmest years on record, including Houston, Jackson, Nashville, and Atlanta, which are experiencing their top 5 warmest years. The warm weather is also causing a significant shift in the timing when plants bloom, as they respond to temperature, humidity, and rainfall. With the early arrival of spring, the earlier blooms can create an ecological mismatch for pollinators, such as monarch butterflies, which rely on specific plants for food and shelter. The timing of when plants bloom is critical for pollinators, and if the bloom appears early, the bloom could already be gone by the time pollinators appear. This mismatch may have catastrophic events on the ecosystem, as 1 out of 3 bites of food we eat is directly connected to the pollinator, such as bees, butterflies, and bats. The effects of the early spring can have a ripple effect on the economy and society, as food shortages can lead to increased prices, which can affect people's ability to access and afford food. Moreover, changes in crop yields and production can also affect the livelihoods of farmers and those who work in the agricultural sector, leading to an economic and social impact. Overall, an early spring can have complex and far-reaching effects on food production and availability, highlighting the need for proactive measures to mitigate the impacts of climate change on agriculture and food systems.
On Tuesday, February 21st, an unusual severe weather event struck portions of New Jersey, and no, it wasn't a classic midwinter blizzard. As to no surprise with the recent mild conditions, severe thunderstorms and even a tornado struck portions of western New Jersey that afternoon in a rare February severe weather setup. Meteorologists warned about the threat about 12 hours in advance, with the Storm Prediction Center issuing a marginal, or better yet known as a level 1 out of 5 severe weather risk. As the afternoon progressed, enough clearing in the skies allowed the atmosphere to fully destabilize, allowing the threat for severe thunderstorms to develop. Very strong upper-level winds, known as wind shear, also helped to aid into the severe weather threat, which helped to lead to the formation of a tornado. The tornado, which has been given an EF2 rating, touched down in West Windsor Township in New Jersey, the first tornado to struck New Jersey in February since 1999, toppling trees and leaving behind a path of destruction. Additionally, large hail of quarter-size and damaging wind gusts of 60 miles per hour were felt by the residents as the storms passed through. This video out of Princeton Junction, New Jersey, shows the extent of the strong winds accompanied by the falling hail. While it's still technically winter, these thunderstorms are a clear sign that spring is just around the corner.
Astronomers using the James Webb Space Telescope have discovered 6 massive galaxies that existed between 500 million and 700 million years after the Big Bang. This discovery alters existing theories about the origins of galaxies, as the galaxies are much more massive than expected. The telescope observes the universe in infrared light, allowing it to detect the faint light from ancient stars and galaxies. By peering into the distant universe, the observatory can essentially see back in time up to 13.5 billion years ago. The galaxies are so massive that they conflict with 99% of models representing early galaxies in the universe, which means scientists may need to rethink how galaxies formed and evolved. The current theory suggests galaxies began as small clouds of stars and dust that grew over time. Investigating early galaxies, the team was surprised to see that the large points of light, and the team thought that they had made a mistake interpreting the data. One way to determine why the galaxies grew so quickly is by taking a spectrum image of the galaxies. The data would provide a much more detailed look at the galaxies and their impressive size. It is also possible that the galaxies identified with Webb data are actually something else entirely. The discovery challenges the previous assumptions about early galaxy formation, as it calls the whole picture of early galaxy formation into question. Regardless, the amount of mass discovered means that the known mass in the stars at this period of our universe is up to 100 times greater than previously thought.
Taking a trip around the globe, powerful Cyclone Freddy made landfall into Madagascar on Tuesday, February 21st as a Category 2 equivalent storm. It is a pretty small cyclone as well, with the width of the storm only measuring 200 miles across, roughly the size of the state of Ohio. Why is it called a cyclone and not a hurricane? Well, the term hurricane, typhoon, and cyclone are all referring to the same type of storm. However, it is highly geography dependent. Since Freddy developed in the Indian Ocean, it has been referred to as a cyclone. Freddy impacted over 2 million people, bringing with it sustained wind gusts over 100 miles per hour and a widespread 4 to 8 inches of rainfall across the island. A storm surge of around 2 meters or 6.6 feet was also forecasted with waves of 20 to 30 feet. However, Freddy has been upholding the waters of the Indian Ocean for quite a while, with its first official designation back on February 5th northwest of Australia. On Sunday, February 19th, Cyclone Freddy reached Category 5 strength with sustained winds of 165 miles per hour. Cyclone Freddy has also become one of 4 storms to cross-track the entire span of the Indian Ocean since modern record-keeping began. For any of you history enthusiasts, Freddy has followed a nearly identical track with Ilana and Leon of February 2000. The formation of Freddy is to no surprise as it falls in the middle of the Indian Ocean cyclone season, which runs from November 15th through April 30th. And now for your Central PA forecast. After a rather rainy and active week, we're going to have finally a chance to dry off as we see a high pressure take control over the Great Lakes region, providing us mostly cloudy skies, however staying mostly dry. Heading into Saturday, we're going to see the continued theme of dry weather as we see the high pressure slide east into the northeast region, still having the effect here. Staying cool, but mostly dry for Saturday, with the system affecting the mid-Atlantic, bringing a few rain showers. And then by Sunday, we're going to stay mostly dry again, with the low pressure center moving into the upstate New York, bringing a few snow showers there. But here in State College, we're staying mostly dry, with warmer air coming in from the south ahead of the warm front. So the warmest day of the weekend will most likely be on Sunday. And your outlook for Friday, a high of 37 degrees, much colder than it was on Thursday, so you'll be bringing out the sweaters and hoodies out once again with those cooler air moving in, with sun and clouds expected. And then for Saturday night, a low of 21 degrees. Make sure to bring out those coats because it'll be feeling like winter once again. And by Saturday, we'll see the clouds return, so you won't be needing those sunglasses on Saturday with a high of only 42 degrees. And then for Saturday night, we'll drop down to a low of 28 degrees, with the clouds keeping it a little bit warmer than it was on Friday night. And then by Sunday, we'll warm up to a high of 48 degrees with warm air coming in from the southern regions, with more clouds and sun expected, so mostly cloudy, but we'll be seeing those peaks of sun at times. And now for tonight's weather feature, Climate Snapshot by Freidhoff.
It's been a February to remember for us in central Pennsylvania, with nearly every day of the month exceeding the average expectation. Some days have even seen temperatures rise up to 20 degrees above climatological averages. But this begs the question, what is causing this insane heat wave to take place during a winter month? We're seeing temperatures go as high as 70 on some days. Now, we can't just put this all on climate change. There is another possibility that should be entertained in this, right? What kind of climate patterns are we seeing, and what kind of teleconnections are influencing this behavior in central Pennsylvania, and it goes for the rest of the Northeast as well?
In 21 days in State College, the maximum temperature has exceeded 50 degrees 10 times, and 60 has been exceeded twice, with the highest temperature occurring on the 16th at 72. On that day, the departure from average was 30.7 degrees. A double-digit temperature departure from average has happened 8 out of 21 times this month.
So this winter actually ranked 6th warmest in our period of record statewide. It's the warmest since about the mid-2000s, mid-2010s actually, so 2016. It was also a really warm winter. Comparisons to other winters, La Nina tends to be times where we get relatively warm winters, but that's not the only situation, obviously, that is impacting the state. But yeah, it's been exceptionally warm this year for sure.
Precipitation in February has also been anomalous. Through 3/4 of the month, State College is expected to experience the equivalent of 1.8 inches of rain and 8.8 inches of snow. The actual values, 0.39 inches of rain and just 0.2 inches of snow. As February comes to a close, we have a couple questions in mind. Mainly, will this trend continue? Will we have these above average temperatures persist into March and April and a pattern of less than average precipitation? Or will we get a day more like this, where we have us sitting around in the 40s and a light rain, very gloomy, very miserable weather, as you can say? Will we see that going into late spring and maybe even into May?
So when we look at the climate models, a lot of the dynamical models that we look at for the next season, the next 2 to 3 months, they're actually hinting at maybe a transition to cooler and maybe slightly wetter conditions as we head into the spring. So we'll see if that is juxtaposed with the really warm winter we've had thus far. It'll be interesting to see if we kind of flip patterns and we go into a kind of a cooler weather pattern for spring.
Of course, in an anomalous winter like this one, certain industries will have to adjust in order to keep up. For instance, the skiing and snowmobiling industry is going to be less pleased with less precipitation and higher temperatures, making it almost impossible for anything to be done in that field. However, an industry that would be benefiting from this would happen to be transportation, as less resources are being spent on cleaning the roads, and more cars can get out onto the roads without fear of accident.
When you have this kind of a warm winter, obviously the ski industry hurts really badly. It's been so warm that they've had a tough time even making snow for consistent periods of time. That being said, we've also had less snowfall, which is obviously good for transportation purposes. We've had less situations where winter weather has impacted other industries. So that has been a positive, but there's no doubt that when you have this kind of warmth, you also have less energy usage as well, so that's helped for heating bills across the state. So there's pluses and minuses when you have these kind of really warm, anomalously warm winters.
Only time will tell, but we have our resources here. We have, of course, climatologists giving us the best information they can, and, of course, in our knowledge bases, as meteorologists, we have knowledge of previous anomalous years, and we will try to convey that information to the public as best as we can as we move into spring, as we make our exit from this less than expected winter. For Weather or Not, I'm Connor Freidhoff.
And now for your extended forecast. But first, let's take a look at the weekend recap. So Friday, Saturday, and Sunday, we're going to see a general increase in temperatures, with the warmest day being on Sunday. So get outdoors to enjoy the warmer conditions before we turn into a more winter-like pattern heading into next week. Starting on Monday, we're going to have temperatures drop below average, with wintry precipitation expected, snow, sleet, and freezing rain, which could impact a lot of communities in the region. By Tuesday, Wednesday, and Thursday, we're going to see a gradual increase in temperatures day by day, but staying mostly cloudy, with the warmest high expected on Thursday. And then by Friday, we're going to have our next winter precipitation system move in, bringing the chance for snow, sleet, and freezing rain, which could impact communities as students leave for spring break.
And now here is your Weather Whiz quiz for the week. How strong was the winds from the New Jersey tornado? Is it A, 110 to 115 miles per hour, B, 95 to 100 miles per hour, C, 90 to 95 miles per hour, or D, 115 to 120 miles per hour? And if you guessed A, you are correct. Now, Dennis, I'm just glad to hear that there hasn't been any deaths or injuries reported.
Still, a tornado in New Jersey in February, I thought we'd be tracking a blizzard.
Well, it's fair to say that it's a very rare sight to see. Well, that is all the time we have for you today. Join us next week for another episode of Whether or Not.